The office smelled like carpet cleaner and burnt coffee, the kind that had been sitting on the burner since morning and turned bitter by noon. Cole Brennan sat across from Leonard Hartwell in a chair that squeaked whenever he shifted his weight, and beside him sat Iris, her hands folded in her lap, the way she always did when she was nervous. The light through the Venetian blinds cut stripes across Leonard's desk, across the manila folder he was sliding back toward them unsigned. March 17, 1987. First National Bank of Hillsborough, Illinois. The same bank Cole's father had walked into for 20 years to renew equipment loans, shake hands, sign papers. The same Leonard Hartwell who'd approved every one of those loans without hesitation. The same man who'd stood in the back row at William Brennan's funeral 6 months ago and told Cole if he ever needed anything, just ask. Leonard's pen tapped 3 times against the desk before he looked up. The words came out, measured, rehearsed the way someone delivers news they've already decided on, but want to sound sympathetic about anyway. Your debt-to-asset ratio is outside our parameters. The board won't approve this. I'm sorry. $23,500. That was the number written on the application, the one Leonard was sliding back like it meant nothing. Enough for a used John Deere 4.44. 8 years old, probably 7,500 hours on it, but still serviceable. Enough to replace the 1973 John Deere 4.02. That threw a rod back in November while Cole was combining the last 40 acres of soybeans. The tractor that now sat behind the machine shed with its engine gutted a 7,000-pound paperweight. Cole didn't argue. His father had taught him there was no point arguing with bankers once they'd made up their minds. He picked up the folder, the paper inside still warm from where Leonard's secretary had printed it that morning. Thanked him. Stood. Walked out. Iris followed without a word. They sat in the F-150 for maybe 10 minutes, parked in the diagonal spot near the hardware store. 1979 Ford blue paint faded to gray bench seat patched with duct tape where the vinyl had split passenger window that wouldn't roll up all the way. Cole's hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles gone white, staring through the windshield at the grain elevator down by the railroad tracks. Life continuing. People walking in and out of Anderson's hardware across the street. Pickup trucks rolling past. The whole town going about its business like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Iris's hand covered his on the wheel, her fingers cool against his skin. Her voice came quiet, carrying more resolve than hope. There's always a way forward. Cole wanted to believe her, wanted to feel something other than the hollow weight in his chest, but the numbers didn't lie. 480 acres to plant come spring. No tractor to pull a planter, no way to borrow money, no way forward that he could see. He started the truck, drove home. Neither of them spoke the whole way. The sound the 4020 made when it died wasn't dramatic. No explosion, no fire shooting from the exhaust. Just a noise like someone shaking a coffee can full of marbles, a mechanical rattling that lasted maybe 3 seconds. Then silence. Dead silence except for the wind and the combine sitting idle in the middle of the field. November 14, 1986. 4:30 in the afternoon light, already fading. Cole had 40 acres of soybeans left to harvest, maybe 3 more hours of work if the weather held. He was sitting in the combine cab watching the 4020 pull the grain cart when he heard it. He knew immediately. Thrown rod, crankshaft failure, the kind of catastrophic engine damage you don't come back from without serious money. He climbed down from the combine, walked over to the tractor, shut it off. Stood there in the November wind looking at 14 years of reliable service rendered useless in 3 seconds. Did the math in his head because that's what farmers do when something breaks. They calculate cost. Engine rebuild $4,000 minimum. Probably closer to $6,000 if the cylinder walls were scored, if the block was cracked, if any of the 100 other things that could be wrong were actually wrong. Replacement tractor used 402s were going for $12,000 to $15,000 if you could find one. New equipment was out of the question. New John Deere 444s started at $45,000. Without a tractor, he couldn't plant 480 acres come spring. Couldn't pull a 6-row planter, couldn't disc, couldn't do any of the work that needed doing. Without planting, no crop. Without a crop, no income. $85,000 in lost revenue, 95% of what the farm brought in every year. One missed payment to the bank and they'd foreclose. Simple as that. He called Iris from the phone booth outside the grain elevator in town, told her what happened. Heard her take a breath. Hold it. Then her voice came back, trying to sound calm. We've survived worse. That night at dinner, their son Wyatt asked the question 8-year-olds ask when they sense something's wrong but don't understand the scope. Dad, will we have to move? Cole and Iris exchanged glances across the table. Their daughter Faye kept eating mashed potatoes, oblivious at 5 years old to the weight of the question. Iris's voice stayed level, matter-of-fact. No, honey, we're not moving. But later, after the kids were in bed, she asked Cole the question she'd been holding since the phone call. They were standing at the kitchen sink, her washing dishes, him drying. The window above the sink looked out over dark fields, nothing visible except their reflections in the glass. Are we being honest with me? Cole set down the plate he'd been drying. Not if I can help it. The next morning, Cole's mother Vera showed up at the house. She was 68, silver hair pulled back in the same bun she'd worn since Cole was a boy, hands still strong from 50 years of farm work. She'd lived alone since William died in the house a quarter-mile down the road where Cole had grown up. She didn't knock, just came through the door the way she always did. Set her purse on the counter, pulled an envelope from inside. Coleman, sit down. He sat. She put the envelope in front of him. He could feel the weight of cash inside, didn't need to open it to know. This is $2,000. It's what I saved from selling your father's cattle after he passed. It's yours. Mama, I can't take this. You need that money. Vera's expression didn't change. William would want you to have it. The farm matters more than me sitting on savings. Cole pushed the envelope back across the table. You keep it. I'll find another way. She pushed it back. You're as stubborn as your father. Fine, keep it here. But when you run out of options, it's waiting. She left the envelope on the table and walked out. 3 days after the funeral, Cole had gone to the machine shed to start sorting through his father's tools. William Brennan had died September 18th, heart attack in the barn at 5:15 in the morning. 71 years old and still feeding calves before sunrise, still putting in 14-hour days like he had his whole life. The shed smelled like oil and old wood and 50 years of work. Cole found his father's maintenance notebook on the workbench pages, yellowed the handwriting careful and precise. William had started keeping it in 1947, right after he came home from the war. Every repair logged, every part replaced, every dollar spent. Cole flipped through pages at random. April 12, 1954. Rebuilt Farmall H transmission. Parts $47. Labor mine. Saved $180. Land payment made on time. August 3, 1961. Replaced clutch on 4020. Parts $83. Could have paid dealer $275. Chose to learn instead. December 19, 1973. Taught Coleman to gap piston rings today. 12 years old. Hands still small but steady. He'll need to know this. Cole sat on the workbench with the notebook in his hands. He hadn't cried at the funeral. 150 people had shown up, filled the church, stood in the back when the pews ran out. Neighbors, people from town, men. William had helped over the years. Cole had shaken every hand, accepted every condolence, held himself together. Now, alone at 2 in the morning where his father had taught him everything, he broke. The Brennan farm had been in the family 3 generations. Cole's grandfather, Otto Brennan, bought the original 160 acres in 1923 for $800 borrowed from a bank in Springfield. German immigrant stock, Otto and his wife Anna farming land that had been prairie grass 20 years before. The Depression hit them like it hit everyone. 1936, Otto lost half the farm. 80 acres gone to the bank, just gone. But he held on to the rest. Worked himself and Anna to exhaustion. Planted every inch they could. Saved every penny. By 1937, they were clawing back. Took until 1952, but Otto bought back those 80 acres and added 160 more. 320 acres when he died in 1974. He left them to William, his only son. Left something else too, something more valuable than land. Own what you can fix. That was Otto's rule. Don't borrow for equipment. Don't buy what you can't afford to maintain yourself. The minute you're working for the bank instead of yourself, you've lost something you can't get back. William followed that rule his whole life. Taught it to Cole starting when Cole was 12, standing in this same shed showing him how to rebuild a carburetor on a Farmall H machine's brake Coleman. That's what they do. Your job is to make them run again. Don't wait for someone else to solve your problems. Learn the work yourself. At 14, Cole learned to gap piston rings to measure bearing clearances to torque bolts to spec. At 16, he rebuilt an entire transmission under William's supervision, 6 weekends of work in the cold shed. When he was done, William had inspected every bolt, checked every tolerance, then nodded once. That'll do. It was the highest praise William gave. Now Cole sat where Otto had sat, where William had sat, holding a notebook that documented 3 generations of refusal to quit. The promise formed in his mind before he could stop it, spoken into the dark. I won't lose this place, Dad. I don't know how, but I won't. 2 hours later, Iris came to the shed with coffee. She didn't say anything, just sat on the workbench beside him, read over his shoulder at the page open in front of him. Your father was meticulous. He had to be. One mistake and he'd lose everything. Like us now. Yeah, like us now. 2 days after Leonard Hartwell turned down the loan, Cole sat at the kitchen table at 11 o'clock at night with a legal pad in front of him. The house was quiet. Iris had gone to bed an hour ago. The kids were asleep down the hall. Cole had been staring at the same piece of paper for 40 minutes, trying to find a way forward that didn't exist. Option 1. Sell the farm. Take what he could get, pay off the debt, start over somewhere else doing something else. He crossed it out hard enough to tear the paper. Option 2. Rent the land to Russell Patterson or one of the other neighbors. Let them farm it while Cole got a job in town. The math didn't work. Rent money wouldn't cover the mortgage and living expenses. They'd lose the farm anyway, just slower. Option 3. Get a job. Doing what? 34 years old, no college degree, no skills except farming. Who was going to hire him? And even if someone did, minimum wage in Illinois was $3.35 an hour. 40 hours a week, that was $5,000 a year before taxes. They needed 4 times that just to survive. Option 4, written at the bottom of the page with a question mark. Find cheap tractor somehow. He underlined it twice. Friday morning, Cole drove into Hillsboro and bought a copy of Farm Implement News from the gas station. Spent 3 hours at the kitchen table going through the classifieds with a pen circling anything that looked remotely possible. Most of the ads were for equipment newer than what he needed, priced higher than he could afford. A few older tractors listed, but when he called the numbers, they were either already sold or the sellers wanted more than he had. Saturday, he called 8 salvage yards within 100 miles. Most of them had parts, not whole tractors. The ones that did have tractors wanted $1,500, $2,000 prices that might as well have been $50,000. Sunday, he drove 60 miles to an auction in Shelbyville. Stood in the cold for 4 hours watching equipment sell. Everything either too new and expensive or too old and broken. He drove home empty-handed. Monday morning, he tried one more number. Eldon Keller's salvage yard, 40 miles south in Taylorville. The phone rang 6 times before someone picked up. The voice on the other end was rough, gravelly, older. Yeah, looking for used tractors. Farmalls specifically. Running or not. A pause. Some static on the line. Then, got a few old ones. Mostly junk. You can come look if you want. 30 acres of equipment, been collecting it since '61. Cash only. Cole wrote down the address, said he'd be there Monday. He didn't tell Iris. Not yet. Didn't want to get her hopes up or worry her more than she already was. Just told her he had some errands to run, would be back by afternoon. The drive south took an hour. County roads, mostly flat land, stretching to the horizon in every direction. March in central Illinois fields, still brown from winter, nothing green yet. Cole passed farms he'd known his whole life, barns and silos against gray sky tractors sitting idle, waiting for spring. Eldon Keller's place sat at the end of a gravel road 2 miles off the highway. 30 acres of salvaged farm equipment spread out like a mechanical graveyard. Combines with their headers removed sitting on blocks. Plows rusted beyond recognition. Grain carts, hay balers, discs, everything you could imagine, and most of it decades past useful. The smell hit first. Old oil and wet metal and diesel fuel mixed with prairie wind. Crows everywhere, dozens of them perched on machinery or circling overhead. Eldon himself was standing near a shed when Cole pulled up. Tall man, 6'2", maybe thin as a fence post. 68 years old, weathered face and hands scarred from 50 years of metalwork. He'd served in World War II, came back and started collecting broken equipment, fixing what he could, selling parts from the rest. He didn't shake hands, just nodded toward the yard. "What you looking for, Farmall? Something I can pull a 6-row planter with. Running or rebuildable?" Eldon spit tobacco juice into the gravel. "Got a 560 in the back. Been here 5 years. Engines froze up. Tires flat. But the frame's straight and the sheet metal ain't rusted through." He led Cole through the maze of equipment past combines and balers and things Cole couldn't identify. In the far back corner, partially hidden behind a grain cart with no wheels, sat a Farmall 560. 1958 model. Red paint that had faded to pink in places, oxidized to brown in others. Both rear tires completely flat rubber, dry-rotted and cracked. The front-end loader was bent at a 30-degree angle like it had hit something solid or something solid had hit it. Serial number still visible on the engine block, 12847. Cole walked around it slowly, tried the crank. Got maybe a quarter turn before it locked solid. Frozen engine just like Eldon said. Could be water in the cylinders, could be freeze damage, could be the pistons seized to the walls. No way to know without tearing it apart. But the frame was straight. The hydraulic cylinders looked intact. The sheet metal was dented but not rusted through, which mattered more than most people realized. A tractor with good bones could be saved. A tractor with rust was scrap. Cole checked the serial number against the year. 58 production. That put it in the first year. International Harvester switched the 560 to a 6-cylinder engine. The C263 gas motor, 60 horsepower at the PTO. Could pull a 4-bottom plow if you needed it to. Could handle a 6-row planter easy. Parts would be the problem. IH stopped making the 560 in 1963, 24 years ago. Finding gaskets, rings, bearings, any of the wear parts would mean calling every salvage yard within 200 miles, hoping someone had old inventory sitting in a back room. Eldon watched him without speaking. Finally, 500 cash, you can take it today. 300 if you just want it for scrap weight. Cole stood there looking at that tractor for 15 minutes, did the math in his head. Best case scenario, $1,500 total. 500 for the tractor, another 1,000 in parts and machine work. He could do the labor himself, just needed parts and someone to grind the crankshaft if it needed it. Worst case, $500 wasted. The engine beyond saving the tractor worthless, his family one step closer to losing everything. 7 weeks until planting season. May 10th was the deadline for getting corn in the ground. After that, every day, late cost yield. Wait too long, and there wasn't enough growing season left to matter. He pulled the envelope from his jacket pocket, the one Vera had left on the kitchen table 3 weeks ago. $500 bills counted out into Eldon's palm. Eldon took the money without comment, folded it, put it in his shirt pocket. "You're crazier than I thought, son. Maybe. But I'm out of options." Getting it home required borrowing Russell Patterson's equipment trailer. Russell was 58. Cole's closest neighbor, farmed 800 acres of his own. He'd been farming since before Cole was born, knew every piece of equipment in the county. He showed up at Eldon's yard an hour after Cole called, took one look at the 560 and shook his head. "Cole, that thing's a boat anchor." "Probably. You're really going to try to rebuild it?" "Don't have much choice." They spent 4 hours winching it up the trailer ramps. Creative use of chains and a come-along and prayer. The whole time Russell kept muttering about how this was a waste of time, how the tractor was too far gone, how Cole should just accept that he was done farming and find a job in town. But he helped anyway. They got it lowered into Cole's machine shed just after dark. Otto had built this shed in 1947, same year he started the maintenance notebook. Concrete floor with oil stains that had been there since before Cole was born. The place where 3 generations had learned that machines could be resurrected if you had patience and skill. Russell stood in the doorway looking at the 560 under the work lights. "You need help with this, you call me. But honestly, I think you're wasting your time." "I appreciate it, Russell." After Russell left, Cole stood alone, looked at the tractor, looked at the tools on the walls, his father's wrenches, his grandfather's hammers. 60 years of accumulated knowledge hanging there. The front door of the house opened. Iris came down the path with a flashlight, stepped into the shed, stopped when she saw the tractor. Silence. Long silence. "Cole." "What did you do?" "Bought us a tractor." "With what money?" "The egg fund. $500. Her face went pale in the work light. "That's Faye's school fund. That's our emergency money. This is the emergency, Iris." Her voice rose, not quite shouting, but close. "You should have asked me." "Would you have said yes?" They both knew the answer. She looked at the tractor again. At him. Back at the tractor. "How long do we have? 7 weeks to get it running and plant 480 acres. Iris pulled her coat tighter around herself. The shed was cold, no heat except what little came from the work lights. She studied the 560 like she was measuring it, weighing whether this gamble had any chance of paying off. "Then you better get started." She turned and walked back to the house. Cole stood in the shed alone, looked at the tractor sitting there like 100 broken promises. Paint-faded tires, flat engine frozen. 11,000 pounds of rust and hope. He found a socket set on the wall, started pulling the first bolt. The first thing Cole did was drain everything. Oil came out thick as molasses, black enough to stain the concrete where it pooled. Water from the radiator ran rust brown, smelled metallic, left orange streaks down the drain pan. Fuel tank held maybe 2 gallons of what looked more like varnish than gasoline, orange-brown and syrupy. March 24th, 5 in the morning. The wood stove in the corner threw heat into the shed. Otto's installation from 1947 still doing its job. Cole worked in coveralls and a coat breath visible in the air hands already stiff from cold and lack of sleep. The engine wouldn't turn, not even a fraction of an inch. He tried the crank with a 3-foot breaker bar, put his full weight into it, felt nothing. Frozen solid. Could be rust in the cylinders, could be water that had seeped past the rings and frozen when winter hit, could be the pistons welded to the cylinder walls by corrosion. No way to know until he got inside. He pulled all 6 spark plugs, laid them out on the workbench. Threads caked with carbon. Porcelain cracked on 3 of them. He sprayed penetrating oil down each cylinder hole, let it run in pool at the bottom. Theory was the oil would work its way past the rings, loosen whatever was holding things tight. Reality was it might take days or weeks, or might not work at all. Left the oil sitting overnight. Went inside at 6:30, ate breakfast with the family, drove Wyatt and Faye to school. Iris watched him over her coffee cup, didn't ask questions. She'd learned over 10 years of marriage when to push and when to give him space. By noon, Cole was back in the shed. Tried the crank again. Nothing. Sprayed more oil. Waited. Day 2, same process. Spray oil, wait. Try the crank, get nothing. Day 3, Wednesday, March 26th. Same routine. Starting to feel like maybe Russell Patterson had been right. Maybe this was a waste of time and money they didn't have. Day 4, Thursday morning. Cole put the breaker bar on the crank pulley, leaned into it with everything he had. Felt something give. Not much, maybe a 1/16 of an inch, but movement. Actual movement. He worked it back and forth for an hour. 1/4 inch one way, 1/4 inch back. By afternoon he had half a rotation. By evening a full turn. The engine wasn't running, wasn't even close, but it was free. Small victory. First real progress in 4 days. Iris came to the shed that night with sandwiches and coffee. Sat on an overturned bucket while Cole ate, watching him work. The silence between them had weight to it, 10 years of partnership that didn't always need words. Finally she spoke. "What can I do to help?" Cole looked up. "You're already helping. Taking care of the kids, keeping the house running, working at the library. I mean with this. The tractor. You need parts, right? Someone to make calls, find suppliers." He hadn't thought about it, but she was right. Parts were going to be the problem. Finding them would take time he didn't have. "Yeah. I'll need gaskets, bearings, probably piston rings. Radiator's going to need wreckering. Carburetor rebuild kit if I can find one. Make me a list. I'll start calling during my shifts at the library. Nobody's watching what I do on the phone." She stood, took his empty plate, leaned down, and kissed the top of his head. "We're partners. You're not doing this alone." After she left, Cole worked until midnight. Started disassembly in earnest. Head bolts first, 6 of them holding the cylinder head to the block. Rusted so badly the wrench kept slipping. He had to heat each one with a propane torch, get the metal hot enough to expand, break the rust's grip. Even then, 2 of them stripped. Had to drill them out, retap the threads. Got the head off around 1 in the morning. Set it on the workbench, looked inside the cylinders with a flashlight. 6 holes staring back walls scored with vertical scratches where the rings had worn grooves. Not terminal. Serviceable with a hone and oversized rings. But it meant machine work, meant more money. The pistons came out next. Had to drive each one with a brass drift and a 5-pound hammer, careful not to crack the skirts. 2 hours per piston, 12 hours total. By the end of the first week, Cole had the whole top end apart parts laid out on the bench in the order they'd come off. Wyatt showed up after school most days. 8 years old, small for his age, but curious. He'd hand Cole tools when asked, watch him work, ask questions. "What's that part do?" "That's a piston. Moves up and down in the cylinder, compresses the fuel and air mixture." "Why's it all black?" "Carbon buildup. From years of running. Means it was working hard." "Can I help clean it?" Cole handed him a wire brush and a rag. Wyatt spent an hour scrubbing carbon off piston skirts, getting black grime all over his hands and face. Looked proud when he was done. The crankshaft was the critical piece. Cole pulled it on a Tuesday, second week of April. Took half a day just to get it out, had to disconnect the rods, unbolt the main caps, wiggle the whole assembly free from the block. Heavy piece, maybe 80 pounds of forged steel journals worn from 14 years of use. He laid it across the workbench, ran his fingers over the bearing surfaces. Could feel the wear, slight depressions where the bearings had pressed against metal. Surface rust in the journals. Nothing catastrophic, but beyond what he could fix with emery cloth and hope. Decision point. Either find someone to grind it back to spec or start hunting for a replacement crank, which could take months and cost more than he had. He loaded it in the back of the F-150, drove 45 miles to Springfield. Miller's Machine Shop, small operation run by Frank Novak. 61 years old, been grinding cranks since Eisenhower was president. Shop smelled like cutting oil and hot metal machines running in the back. Frank took the crank, laid it on his bench, pulled out micrometers. Measured each journal, wrote numbers on a piece of cardboard. Ran his thumb over the surfaces, feeling for things the instruments couldn't catch. Took him 10 minutes. Then he looked up. "I can save it. Take 10/1000ths off each journal, bring it back to tolerance. $75. 3 days. Cole felt something unknot in his chest. "How sure are you?" Frank's expression didn't change. "Been doing this 40 years, I'm sure." Cole left the crank there, drove home with empty truck bed and cautious hope. 3 days of not working, not knowing, just waiting. The hardest part of any repair was trusting someone else to do their job right. Iris made phone calls every day during her library shifts. She'd pulled International Harvester service manuals from the reference section, copied down part numbers, started working through a list of suppliers. Called salvage yards in Iowa, Wisconsin, Missouri, anywhere that might have old inventory. Thursday, she came home with news. Found a guy in Iowa, bought out a defunct IH dealership's back room. Had new old stock piston rings and bearing sets for the C263. Wanted $180 for the complete package. Cole did the math. More than he'd hoped to spend, less than he'd feared. Tell him yes. She called Friday morning, gave the man Cole's address. Parts arrived the following Tuesday, brown cardboard box with grease stains on the corners. Cole opened it in the kitchen, laid everything out on the table. Rings still in their original packaging, bearings wrapped in wax paper, like stepping back to 1958. The gasket set came from Wisconsin, $95. Iris had negotiated down from $120, told the supplier she'd buy from someone else if he didn't drop the price. The man on the phone had laughed, said his wife negotiated the same way, knocked $25 off. Carburetor was harder. Cole went to a farm auction on Saturday, stood in the cold for 3 hours watching equipment sell. Most of it went high buyers who had money or credit or both, but buried in a box lot of miscellaneous parts, Cole spotted a rebuilt carburetor for the C263. Bidding went to $115 before he raised his hand. Got it for $125. Overpaid, but he needed it. Radiator had to go to a shop in Decatur for wreckering. Core was plugged with sediment fins corroded. 40 miles one way, dropped it off Monday morning. Shop wanted $140, said it would take a week. Cole didn't have a week, but didn't have a choice either. The smaller parts added up. Hoses that had dry rotted into brittle rubber snakes, belts cracked like old leather, oil filter, fuel filter, air filter, bolts too rusted to reuse, fittings frozen solid. Another $110 in things most people wouldn't notice, but that mattered when you were trying to make a tractor run. Friday afternoon, April 10th. Cole picked up the crankshaft from Frank's shop. Frank handed it over, wrapped in newspaper journals, polished to a mirror finish. Numbers written in pencil on the wrapping, 10,000ths removed from each journal, tolerances marked, everything documented. She'll run another 100,000 miles easy. Cole unwrapped it in the truck, ran his fingers over the journals, smooth as glass, the kind of work you couldn't rush, couldn't fake. Frank had saved him. By mid-April, Cole had parts spread across every surface in the shed, pistons soaking in solvent, valves laid out in order, crankshaft on the bench wrapped in oiled rags. The engine block sat empty, ready for reassembly once the radiator came back. Running total $500 for the tractor, $75 for machine work, $650 in parts so far, $1,225. Still under budget, still manageable. But the hydraulic system sat untouched in the corner, and Cole knew eventually he'd have to deal with it. Tuesday, April 14th. The radiator came back from Decatur. Cole installed it Wednesday morning, filled the cooling system to test for leaks. Everything looked good. Started reassembly in earnest. The crankshaft went in first, bearings pressed into the main caps, everything torqued to spec. Cole used his father's torque wrench, the same one William had used for 40 years. Each bolt got checked twice, measured against the numbers in the service manual. Pistons next. New rings gapped to tolerance, installed with a ring compressor. Pistons slid into cylinders one at a time. Connected the rods to the crank, torqued the rod bolts, checked side clearance. Everything by the book. Everything done right. By Thursday evening, the short block was assembled. Cole poured fresh oil in, turned the crank by hand. Smooth rotation, no binding pressure building as oil coated bearing surfaces. First time in months he allowed himself to think this might actually work. Friday he tackled the valve train. 32 valves, total 16 intake, 16 exhaust. Each one had to be lapped into its seat, ground against the valve face with grinding compound until the contact pattern was perfect. Tedious work hours of twisting valves with a stick and suction cup, checking progress, grinding more. Faye showed up after school, watched him work. 5 years old, more interested in drawing pictures than mechanics. She sat on the floor with crayons and paper, drew the tractor in red and blue and green. When she was done, she held it up. "Look, Daddy, it's your tractor." "That's real good, honey. Are you going to make it work?" "That's the plan." She taped the drawing to the wall above the workbench, her contribution to the project. Saturday morning, April 18th, Cole decided to test the hydraulic system. He'd avoided it because hydraulics were complicated, expensive to fix if something was wrong. But he needed to know before he went much further. Filled the hydraulic reservoir with fresh oil, primed the pump by hand. Connected a test gauge to the system, tried the lift arms. Nothing. Zero pressure. Pump running dry, no flow. He spent 2 hours diagnosing, checked the pump drive, verified it was spinning, pulled the suction screen, found it clean, traced the lines from pump to cylinders looking for obvious breaks or leaks, found nothing obvious, which meant the problem was internal. Pulled the hydraulic pump Sunday afternoon. Small unit, maybe 8 inches across, bolted to the side of the transmission. Should have been simple to rebuild. Wasn't. Opened it up, found the gears inside, scored metal shavings in the bottom of the housing. The pump had been running dry for years, worn itself out, grinding metal against metal. Rebuild kit would fix it, but Cole needed the kit first. Checked the lift cylinders. Monday. All 3 seized solid. Pistons corroded to the cylinder walls, seals deteriorated to dust. Couldn't be freed by penetrating oil or wishful thinking. Had to come apart, had to be cleaned, resealed, reassembled. Tuesday morning, Cole sat at the kitchen table with a parts catalog and a calculator. Numbers didn't add up the way he'd hoped. Hydraulic cylinder rebuild kits, $60 each, 3 cylinders, $180 total. Pump rebuild kit, $95. New lines and fittings to replace corroded pieces, $65. $340 he hadn't budgeted. New total, $1,225 plus $340. $1,565. Original budget was under $1,500. He'd blown past it and wasn't done yet. Still needed a battery. Still needed to account for things that would break during testing, parts that would fail when he actually tried to run the machine. The checking account had $843. Mortgage payment due May 1st was $600. That left $243 available. Nowhere near enough. The coffee can in the pantry where Vera's egg money had been was empty. Every dollar already spent. Iris's part-time library job brought in $340 a month. Barely covered groceries and utilities. She'd picked up extra shifts at the hospital doing clerical work, pulling in another $140 when they had hours. But that was earmarked for the mortgage shortfall, making up the difference between what they had and what they owed. Cole sat at that table for an hour, recalculating the same numbers, hoping the math would change. It didn't. Iris found him there just after midnight. She'd been asleep, woke up, noticed his side of the bed empty. Came downstairs in her robe, saw the papers spread out. How bad? He handed her the calculator. She read the numbers, understanding immediately. We need $500 more minimum, maybe $700 to be safe. Her eyes closed. When they opened again, something had shifted in her expression. Resignation mixed with determination. I got an offer last week. Full-time position at the hospital. $18,000 a year. I turned it down because of the kids, the farm, everything. I can call back, tell them I changed my mind. Cole felt the weight of it, what she was offering. Full-time meant 40 hours a week, meant less time with Wyatt and Faye, meant carrying more than her share while he gambled on a broken tractor. I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm telling you. We're partners, remember? This isn't just your farm. It's ours. Our family's future. She took the calculator from his hands, set it aside. Her voice stayed level, factual, the way she got when decisions had been made and arguing was pointless. I'll call Monday. Start next week. First paycheck comes end of April. That'll carry us through. He wanted to argue, wanted to tell her no, wanted to find another way. But there wasn't another way, and they both knew it. The next morning, Vera showed up at the house. She didn't call ahead, didn't knock, just walked in carrying a cardboard box, set it on the kitchen counter. Coleman, come here. He came in from the shed still wearing coveralls covered in hydraulic oil. Vera opened the box, showed him what was inside. 4 rifles, his father's collection. Winchester 30-30, Remington 12-gauge, 2 smaller rifles Cole didn't recognize. Guns William had owned 40 years, kept clean and oiled in a locked cabinet. I sold these yesterday. Got $400. It's yours. Mama, those were Dad's. He left them to me. Vera's face didn't change. William left you the farm. These are just metal and wood. You need money, here it is. Stop being proud and take it. I can't. You can and you will, because in about 3 weeks you're going to need every dollar you can get, and your father would rather see you save this place than keep some guns in a cabinet. She left the box on the counter, walked out before Cole could argue further. That night, Iris called her mother, asked to borrow $300. Her mother lived in Springfield on a teacher's pension, didn't have much extra, but she wired $200 the next day with a note, "Pay me back when you can. Take care of my daughter." By Wednesday, April 22nd, Cole had enough money to order the hydraulic parts. Spent Thursday and Friday rebuilding the 3 lift cylinders. Tedious work disassembly and cleaning, installing new seals, reassembling. Each cylinder took 4 hours. He finished the 3rd one Saturday morning. The hydraulic pump took another day. Gears installed with new bearings, housing cleaned and sealed, everything reassembled to spec. Sunday evening he had it back on the tractor system filled with oil ready to test. Monday, April 20th. Cole noticed water on the floor beneath the engine. Not much, just a few drops, but enough to matter. He'd filled the cooling system Friday for a leak test, let it sit over the weekend. Now there was water pooling on concrete. Traced it back to the engine block. Not a hose, not a gasket. The block itself weeping water from a hairline crack just above the freeze plug. His stomach dropped. Spent 2 hours with a flashlight and magnifying glass trying to see how bad it was. Crack ran maybe 3 inches invisible until pressurized, opened up just enough for coolant to seep through. Freeze damage from the tractor sitting outside for years, water trapped in the cooling passages expanding when it froze. Options ran through his head. Weld it, which meant taking the block to a machine shop, paying $300 to $400, 50-50 chance it would hold. Replace the block, which meant finding another C263 engine block for a 1958 Farmall 5.6. Which might not exist anywhere in the state, and if it did would cost $600 or more. Or give up. Walk away. Admit Russell Patterson was right. This was a waste of time and money. Sell what he could salvage, take whatever Jim Kowalski would pay for the land, start over somewhere else doing something else. Cole walked out of the shed at 9:30, didn't tell. Iris didn't say anything. Got in the F-150, drove to the edge of the property where the fields met empty space. Parked, shut off the engine, sat in darkness. Radio on low, some country station out of Springfield. Merle Haggard singing about Mama trying to raise him better. Cole stared through the windshield at nothing, mind running numbers and scenarios and coming up empty every time. For the first time since buying the tractor, he let himself consider the possibility of failure. What it would mean, what they'd lose, where they'd go. Wyatt and Faye in a different school, different town. Iris working full-time to support them while Cole found whatever job would take him. The farm sold to Kowalski or someone like him, another piece of family history erased. He thought about his grandfather losing 80 acres in the Depression, fighting for 10 years to get it back. Thought about his father working 14-hour days into his 70s, dying in the barn because that's where he belonged. Thought about the promise he'd made in the shed, the notebook full of careful repairs and money saved. Around 11:30, headlights appeared in the rearview mirror. Iris's car, she'd gone looking for him. Pulled up beside the truck, got out, opened the passenger door without asking. Slid into the seat, closed the door against the cold. They sat in silence for maybe 2 minutes. Then she spoke. "Kids are scared. Faye asked if Daddy left us." Cole's throat tightened. "I'm thinking about giving up. That's not the man I married." More silence. The radio played low between them. Finally Cole spoke, voice rough. "There's a crack in the engine block. I can maybe weld it for $300. Maybe it holds, maybe it doesn't. Or I replace it, which I can't afford and probably can't find anyway. Or I quit." Iris turned in the seat, looked at him directly. "Your father fixed a cracked block once. You told me that. On the old Farmall H. Back in the 40s before they had good epoxy." He remembered. Story. William had told maybe once, working in the shed late at night. Grandfather Otto had cracked a block, couldn't afford to replace it, used some kind of metal putty that was new at the time, held for 20 years. JB Weld might work. It's $18 to try. Her hand found his in the dark. "Then try it, before you decide to quit. Because I didn't work double shifts so you could give up over $18. He looked at her. Didn't know about the double shifts, hadn't noticed because he'd been too focused on the tractor. "When? Last 3 weeks. Hospital needs weekend coverage. I've been taking every shift they offer." Something broke loose in his chest. Not quite crying, but close. "Iris, I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. Be stubborn. That's what you're good at. She kissed him, got out of the truck, drove back toward the house, left him sitting there with the radio and the dark and the knowledge that he was out of options, except one. Saturday morning, Cole drove to the hardware store in Hillsboro, found JB Weld Marine, Weld on a shelf in the back, high-temperature epoxy rated for engine applications, $18.95 plus tax. Brought it home, read the instructions 3 times. Spent 6 hours prepping the crack. Drained the coolant, dried the block, completely cleaned the area with degreaser and acetone. Used a Dremel to roughen the surface, give the epoxy something to grip. Mixed the 2-part compound according to directions, applied it carefully along the entire crack, built it up in layers. Instructions said 24 hours for full cure. Cole covered it with plastic, turned off the shed lights, went inside. Sunday they went to church, first time in 3 weeks. Sat in the back pew, listened to the sermon about faith and perseverance. Cole barely heard the words, mind still in the shed, wondering if epoxy would hold against 60 pounds of cooling system pressure. After church, people asked how things were going. He smiled, said fine, didn't mention the tractor or the crack or any of it. Drove home, had lunch with the family, waited for the hours to pass. 2 o'clock Sunday afternoon, Cole went back to the shed, removed the plastic covering. The epoxy had cured, hard gray-silver coating over the crack. Looked solid, but looking wasn't knowing. Filled the cooling system with water. Installed a pressure tester, pumped it up to 15 psi. Let it sit. Watched the gauge for 30 minutes. Pressure held steady. No leaks, no water on the floor. The epoxy was holding. He let it sit overnight. Monday morning, checked again. Still holding. Increased pressure to 25 psi. Watched for an hour. Still no leaks. Relief came slow, cautious. One problem solved, but he'd been doing this long enough to know something else would break. That's what happened when you rebuilt a machine this old. Finished assembly through the week. Cylinder head back on new gaskets, sealing everything tight. Timing chain installed, cover bolted down. Water pump, fuel pump, carburetor. Hoses and belts and every small piece that made an engine run. Thursday he filled it with fresh oil. 10 weight, 35 quarts. Watched it drain down into the crankcase, waited for oil pressure to build. Turned the crank by hand. Felt compression in the cylinders. Felt everything moving the way it should. Friday he installed a new battery. $67 from Napa, his last major expense. Connected the cables positive to positive, negative to ground. Final cost. Tally ran through his head. $500 for the tractor, $75 for crankshaft grinding, $650 in engine parts, $340 in hydraulic parts, $67 for the battery, $18.95 for JB Weld. Miscellaneous bolts, fluids, supplies, maybe 40 more. $1,632 total. Vera's rifle money, Iris's double shifts. Her mother's borrowed $200. Every dollar scraped together from corners they didn't know existed. Wednesday evening, April 29th, 6:30. The whole family stood in the shed. Cole on the tractor seat. Iris holding Faye's hand, Wyatt beside his father. Vera near the door, arms crossed, watching. Mixture control set to rich. Choke pulled full. Ignition switch turned to on. Cole's hand hovered over the starter button that single moment before knowing stretched out long enough to hurt. He pushed the button. The starter motor turned. Engine cranked. Coughed once. Died. Faye's voice small and hopeful. "It's okay, Daddy. Try again." Second attempt. Crank catch sputter. Died again. Third time. The engine caught, sputtered, smoothed out. 6 cylinders firing in sequence. That deep, straight 6 rumble, William had taught him to recognize that sound his grandfather had heard on Saturday mornings 70 years ago. White smoke poured from the exhaust. New piston rings not seated yet, burning oil. Normal. Expected. The sound filled every corner of the shed. Cole let it idleize on the gauges. Oil pressure climbed to 45 psi and held. Temperature started rising, stabilized at 180 degrees. No knocking, no rattling, no valve clatter, just smooth mechanical rhythm. Wyatt's hand gripped his shoulder. "Dad, you did it. You actually did it." Iris was crying, trying not to let the kids see. Faye clapped her hands, dancing in place. Vera stood silent, lips pressed tight, eyes wet. Cole let it run for 30 minutes. Watched for problems that didn't appear. Listened for sounds that didn't come. When he finally shut it down, the silence felt different than before. Not empty, expectant. His hands were shaking, not from fear or exhaustion, from something closer to defiance, the kind his grandfather had learned during the Depression, his father during the farm crisis of the 70s, the kind that said when the world tells you no, when the numbers don't work, when common sense says quit, sometimes you can pull something from a junk pile and make it live again. Thursday morning. May 1st, Cole hitched the 6-row planter to the 560 for the first time. Russell Patterson had loaned it to him years ago, sitting unused in Russell's equipment shed since he'd upgraded to an 8-row. The hitch pins slid in easy hydraulic connections, snapped tight. Cole climbed up, engaged. The PTO watched the planter meters spin. Everything moved the way it should. Test run around the property took 2 hours. The 560 pulled the planter without strain. Hydraulics lifted and lowered smoothly. Drawbar held steady. Slight bog when he hit heavier soil near the creek, but that was expected with a gas engine versus diesel. Fuel consumption would be higher too, maybe $15 more per day than a modern tractor. But $15 a day meant nothing if the alternative was not planting at all. Saturday he loaded seed corn from the grain bin, Pioneer Hybrid. $75 a bag, enough for 80 acres. Soybeans came later. Different rotation schedule. The corn had to go in first before May 10th if he wanted full yield potential. After that, every day cost him bushels per acre, narrow margin getting narrower. Iris drove out to the field mid-morning with thermoses of coffee and sandwiches wrapped in foil. Wyatt rode along, wanted to watch his father plant. Faye came too, brought her crayons and paper. They sat on the tailgate of the F-150 while Cole made the first pass. 560 rumbling steady planter dropping seed every 7 inches, covering it with soil. Wyatt's eyes tracked the tractor across the field. Is it always this slow? Farming's not fast. It's deliberate. Rush and you miss spots, plant too shallow, overlap rows. Slow is right. The boy absorbed this, filed it away with the other lessons he'd been collecting. How to gap spark plugs, how to torque bolts, how patience mattered more than speed. Faye sat in the truck bed drawing pictures of the tractor working, adding clouds and sun and birds that didn't exist in the gray April sky. Her version of reality was better than the actual, and Cole didn't have the heart to correct her. By evening, Cole had 40 acres planted. 440 to go. 8 more days at this pace, maybe 9 if weather turned. Forecast showed clear through Wednesday, chance of rain Thursday. He'd work until dark each night, start again at dawn. Sunday he skipped church. Iris took the kids, came back around noon with food. Cole ate in the field tractor, idling 10-minute break before starting again. The 560 burned through fuel faster than he'd calculated, tank needing refill every 6 hours instead of 8. Math worked out to $40 a day in gasoline versus $25 for diesel. Extra 15 added up, but complaining about it now was pointless. Monday afternoon, Russell Patterson's truck appeared at the field edge. Russell got out, stood watching Cole make a pass. When Cole turned at the end of the row, Russell walked over. How's she running? Steady. Uses more fuel than I'd like, but she's doing the job. Russell's face carried something Cole hadn't seen before. Not quite embarrassment, but close. He looked at the 560 at the planted rows stretching behind it. I was wrong about this. Didn't think you'd get it running. Told my wife you were throwing money away. Most people thought the same. Yeah, but I should have known better. Your dad taught me half of what I know about keeping equipment alive. Should have trusted you'd learned the same. Cole shut off the tractor, climbed down. Russell extended his hand. They shook, understanding passing between them without elaboration. You need help finishing these last 200 acres? I got time. I appreciate it, but I need to do this myself. Prove something maybe to myself more than anyone. Russell nodded. I get it. But offer stands. He drove off, left Cole standing in the field. Small moment, but it mattered. First time someone had looked at what he'd done and seen success instead of failure. Tuesday, the hydraulic line to the front cylinder developed a leak. Minor thing, just a fitting that hadn't been tightened enough, but it cost an hour to diagnose and fix. By the time Cole got back to planting, he'd lost half a field's worth of daylight. Wednesday, he pushed past exhaustion, planted until 11 at night under the work lights he'd rigged to the tractor. Iris came out at 10 with coffee, told him to stop, get some sleep. He finished the row first, then quit. 200 acres down, 280 to go. Thursday morning, Jim Kowalski showed up, pulled his truck parallel to where Cole was planting, got out, waited. Cole finished the row, shut down the tractor. Kowalski walked over, hands in his pockets. 62 years old, farmed 1,200 acres, served on the county board. Owned land on 3 sides of the Brennan property, made no secret he wanted to expand. Got a minute? Cole climbed down, waited. I made your wife an offer back in April. $192,000 for your 160 rented acres. She tell you? She mentioned it. I was hoping you'd fail, going to be honest about that. Thought by now you'd be desperate enough to sell, I could get the land for less. Maybe 150. Cole kept his expression neutral. That why you're here? Lower the offer? No. I'm here to say I was wrong. You pulled off something I didn't think possible. Respect that, even if it means I don't get the expansion I wanted. He pulled an envelope from his jacket, handed it over. Cole opened it, found a check for $500. What's this for? Bet I made with Russell. Said you wouldn't plant a single acre? He said you would. I lost. Cole tried to hand it back. I can't take this. It's not charity. It's settling a debt. We bet on you failing. You proved us wrong. That's worth acknowledging. Kowalski got back in his truck, drove away. Cole stood holding the check, not quite sure what to do with it. $500 was a third of a mortgage payment, 2 months of groceries, a buffer he desperately needed. But taking money from a man who'd wanted him to fail felt wrong somehow. Iris made the decision for him that night. Saw the check on the kitchen table, picked it up. You're depositing this tomorrow. He bet against us. And lost. That's how bets work. We need this money, Cole. Don't let pride turn down help just because it came from someone who doubted you. She was right. She was usually right about these things. He deposited it. Friday morning, watched the teller stamp the deposit slip, felt the knot in his chest loosen slightly. Friday through Sunday, Cole planted 16 hours a day. Wyatt rode in the tractor cab Saturday afternoon, learning to watch the planter meters alert his father if one stopped spinning. The boy fell asleep around 7, head against Cole's shoulder. Cole kept planting, one arm around his son, the other on the steering wheel. By Sunday evening, 460 acres were in the ground. 20 acres left, less than a day's work. Cole could see the finish line, taste it. Monday morning, May 11th, 8:30. Last pass through the final field. The planter dropped the last seeds, covered them, rolled over them. Cole reached the end of the row, lifted the planter, shut down the tractor. 480 acres, every inch planted. He sat there for a long time, engine ticking as it cooled, looking at the field. Dark soil stretching to the horizon, seeds beneath waiting for rain and sun. Everything his grandfather and father had fought to keep, now dependent on weather and commodity prices and forces beyond his control. But the work was done. He'd held on. Iris and the kids showed up an hour later, brought lunch. They ate in the field, celebrating quietly. Faye picked wildflowers from the fence line, made a bouquet for her mother. Wyatt asked when the corn would come up. Week or 2 if we get rain. You'll see green shoots first, then stalks. By July, it'll be head high. Can I help with harvest? You'll be in school. But weekends, yeah, you can help. The rain came Thursday, gentle soaking rain that lasted 2 days. Perfect timing. By the following Tuesday, green shoots appeared across the fields. By June 1st, the corn was 6 inches tall. Summer settled into routine. Cole worked the fields, cultivated between rows, sprayed for weeds when necessary. The 560 ran daily, reliable as sunrise. Small issues cropped up, a fuel line cracked a belt, needed replacing, the carburetor required adjustment, but nothing catastrophic, nothing that stopped forward progress. Iris worked full-time at the hospital, 40 hours a week in medical records. She came home tired, helped with dinner, put the kids to bed. Weekends she did laundry and grocery shopping and all the things that kept a household running. Never complained, never asked why this had to be so hard. Late June. Beth Patterson stopped by the house. Russell's wife, mid-50s, taught Sunday school at the church. She carried a casserole dish covered in foil. Thought you could use a home-cooked meal. I know Iris is working full-time now. That's kind of you. Beth set the dish on the counter, hesitated. Listen, I owe you an apology. Back in April at the grocery store, I said some things about Mark buying junk equipment. About you being, well, I wasn't kind. Iris remembered. The whispers in the cereal aisle, the pitying looks. You were scared for us. I understand. Still, I was wrong. What you and Cole pulled off, it's remarkable. And I want you to know if you ever need help with the kids, someone to watch them while you're working, I'm available. The offer landed with unexpected weight. Iris realized she'd been carrying the burden of childcare alone, hadn't asked for help because she didn't want to appear weak. That would be really helpful, actually. Beth smiled. We farm wives have to stick together. Lord knows the men don't always make it easy. After Beth left, Iris stood in the kitchen holding the casserole dish, feeling something shift. She wasn't alone. The community that had judged was also the community that would catch her when she fell. Vera stopped by most Wednesdays, brought vegetables from her garden, stayed for coffee. Sat at the kitchen table with Iris, two women who'd married into farming, who'd watched their husbands give everything to land that gave back grudgingly. One afternoon in July, Vera asked the question that had been hanging unspoken since April. You ever regret it? Marrying into this, Iris poured more coffee, took her time answering. Some days. When the money's tight and the kids need things and I'm working double shifts. But then I see what Cole's built, what he's teaching Wyatt, how they don't quit even when quitting makes sense. That's worth something you can't put a price on. Your grandmother-in-law told me the same thing during the Depression, said the land would take care of us if we took care of it. I thought she was crazy. Turned out she was right. August brought heat. Corn grew faster, stalks reaching for the sky, tassels forming, beans filled out in the pods. Cole walked the fields most evenings, checking plants, looking for disease or pest damage. Found some rootworm pressure in the South 40, sprayed it before it spread. Early September, the corn started drying down, moisture content dropping as kernels hardened. Cole ran tests, pulled ears at random, shelled them by hand, measured moisture with a gauge, waiting for that magic number 15% when harvest could begin. Third week of September, he called the custom cutter. Harvesting 480 acres with a combine he didn't own meant hiring it done. Cost varied depending on yield, usually ran about $12 an acre. $5,700 total if the estimate held. The cutter showed up September 28th with a John Deere 7720 newer machine Cole couldn't afford to buy but could afford to rent for a week. They started in the northeast field, driest ground corn that had been planted first. Yield monitor in the combine cab showed numbers as they cut. First field averaged 138 bushels per acre. Second field 142. By the fourth day, pattern emerged. Most fields running between 135 and 145, few outliers, higher or lower. Wyatt rode in the combine one afternoon, watched the numbers climb on the monitor. Dad's going to be happy about this. The custom operator man named Dale from 2 counties over nodded. Your dad did something special. Most farmers who lost their main tractor would have folded. He fought. My grandpa taught him. Said you never quit on land. Smart man, your grandpa. Final tally came in October 1st. 480 acres average yield 142 bushels per acre. 68,160 bushels total. At current market price, $1.95 per bushel, that was $132,912 gross revenue. But gross wasn't net, never was. Cole sat at the kitchen table with receipts and invoices spread out. Pencil and calculator, same way his father had figured it, same way Otto had before him. Seed corn $6,000, fertilizer $11,000, herbicide $4,800, fuel $3,200, custom combining $5,700, equipment maintenance $1,800, miscellaneous $2,000, total expenses $31,500, revenue minus expenses $101,412. But that didn't account for living expenses, the money they'd spent March through September just surviving. Mortgage payments $4,200. Groceries and utilities $6,000. Iris's hospital job had covered most of it, plus the kids' school supplies and clothes and everything else. Without her income, they'd have drowned. Net farm income after living expenses roughly $68,000. Not great, not terrible, enough to make the numbers work for another year. Cole's first priority was paying people back. Vera's $400 from the rifles. Iris's mother's $200. Frank Novak didn't need repaying. The $75 crankshaft grinding had been paid in cash at the time, but Cole drove to Springfield anyway, gave Frank a $100 bill. "What's this for saving my farm?" "$75 for the work, $25 because you did it right." Frank pocketed the money, shook Cole's hand. "Bring me more work." Good to see a young farmer who knows quality matters. Next was Iris's wedding ring. She'd sold it back in April without telling him, gotten $290 from a pawn shop in Decatur. Cole called every shop in the area, described it, asked if they still had it. Found it on the third call. They wanted $300 to release it. Cole drove up that afternoon, paid cash, brought it home, handed it to Iris that evening while she was making dinner. She stopped, looked at the ring in his palm. "I told you I'd get it back." Her eyes filled. She slipped it on, turned her hand to catch the light. 10 years she'd worn that ring, sold it for 3 months, had it back. Didn't say anything, just kissed him. Mortgage came next. Minimum payment was $600 a month, $7,200 a year. Cole paid 12 months in advance, $8,400 plus an extra $2,000 toward principal. Total $10,800. Knocked the principal balance down to $54,200, save interest over time. Emergency fund got $3,000. Coffee can in the pantry, cash they could reach if something broke or someone got sick. Not enough to solve major problems, but enough to handle minor ones without panic. Kids' education fund $2,000. Split between Wyatt and Faye, deposited in savings accounts at the bank. Leonard Hartwell set them up personally, mentioned how good it was to see the Brennan farm still operating. By the time Cole finished paying bills and setting money aside, he had maybe $15,000 left for the winter. Tight, but manageable. They'd survived. Winter came cold. December brought snowfields frozen solid, nothing to do except maintenance. Cole rebuilt the carburetor on the 5.60, replaced hydraulic seals that had started weeping, changed oil and filters, kept the tractor ready for spring. Wyatt spent more time in the shed learning. 9 years old now. Hands getting steadier. Understanding growing. Cole taught him to read a service manual, follow torque specifications, check tolerances with a micrometer. Same lessons William had taught 40 years ago. Faye came to the shed sometimes too, but her interest ran different. She'd sit on the floor drawing while the men worked, creating elaborate scenes of the farm with people and animals and tractors that looked nothing like reality, but captured something true anyway. One Saturday in January, Wyatt asked the question Cole had been waiting for. "Why'd you keep that old tractor? Could have got something newer if you'd sold it after harvest." Cole led him outside, pointed at the fields. "You see that land?" "Yeah. How much money do we owe on it?" "You told me we paid extra on the loan. About $54,000 left." "Right. Now imagine we borrowed another $20,000 for a newer tractor. What would that make the total? $74,000. And what would that extra $20,000 do to our monthly payment?" "Make it higher." Wyatt processed this, working through the logic. "So keeping the old tractor means we owe less money, means we control our own time. Nobody can tell us what to do because we're not working to make someone else's payment. That tractor represents freedom more than it represents horsepower." The boy looked at the 560 sitting in the shed, understanding dawning. Someday he'd explain this to his own son, pass the lesson forward, but for now he just nodded. March 1988. 1 year since the bank rejection. Leonard Hartwell called, asked if Cole and Iris could come to the office. They drove into town, walked into the same building, same room. Leonard stood when they entered, gestured to chairs. More formal than last time, but friendlier. "I've been reviewing your account. Your farm's performance this past year has been exceptional. Debt-to-asset ratio is down to 28%. Income steady. You've demonstrated financial discipline we don't often see. He slid a paper across the desk. New loan application. We'd like to offer a $25,000 line of credit. Competitive interest rate, flexible terms. Available if you need it for equipment upgrades or expansion. Cole picked up the paper, read it. Everything Leonard said was there. Good terms, reasonable rate. A year ago he'd begged for $23,500 and been turned down. Now they were offering $25,000 without him asking. He looked at Iris. She gave the slightest nod, leaving the decision to him. Thank you, Leonard. But we'll pass. Leonard's eyebrows rose. You're sure most farmers would jump at this opportunity? Debt costs more than interest. It costs sleep and freedom and time with family. We'd rather grow slow with what we have than fast with money that isn't ours. Leonard leaned back, studied them both. Your father would have said the same thing. Turned down every expansion offer I made him over 20 years. Told me patience was worth more than size. They stood, shook hands. Walking out, Cole felt something shift inside him. Power dynamic reversed. Year ago he'd been desperate, begging. Now the bank was courting him, and he had the strength to say no. Spring '88, Cole planted 500 acres. Added 20 rented from a neighbor who'd retired. Same 560, same 6-row planter, same careful work. Wyatt rode along more often, learning to watch Gage's spot problems before they became failures. Harvest that fall brought 148 average, better than the previous year. Prices held steady. Another 60,000 net after expenses and bills. Steady progress. No dramatic leaps, just incremental gains compounding over time. Fall '89. Cole paid off the mortgage early. 54,000 lump sum cleared the whole debt. Owned 320 acres free and clear, no bank holding paper on any of it. That night he pulled out his father's notebook, made an entry in the margin. October 12, 1989. Paid off land debt. Farm fully owned, no encumbrances. Coleman Brennan. His father's handwriting filled the pages before. His grandfather's entries from the 40s and 50s. Now, his. 3 generations of careful stewardship documented in pencil and worn paper. Years passed. Corn prices rose and fell. Weather came, good and bad. Equipment broke and got fixed. The 560 kept running, maintained meticulously, parts replaced as needed. By the mid-90s, Cole had saved enough to buy a used John Deere 445 newer tractor with more power. But he kept the 560, used it for lighter work, couldn't bring himself to sell. Wyatt graduated high school in '96, went to community college for agriculture business, came back to the farm, started working full-time, learning the operation from the ground up. By 2000, he was managing day-to-day. Cole stepping back gradually. 2005, Cole turned 52. Iris, retired from the hospital, had worked 23 years in medical records, earned a pension, small but steady. They'd saved enough, lived simply enough that between farm income and her pension, they were comfortable. Faye became a teacher, married a man from Springfield, had 2 kids of her own. Visited most Sundays, brought grandchildren who climbed on tractors and played in the barn. Wyatt married a woman from town, had a daughter they named Hazel. The 560 sat in the shed through all of it, witnessed to decades. Cole started it every few months, let it run, kept the engine from seizing. Couldn't explain why exactly, just felt wrong to let it die after everything it had survived. 2024. Cole was 71, same age his father had been when the heart attack took him. Different times now, different equipment. Wyatt ran the farm with modern machinery, GPS-guided tractors, 12-row planters, combines that calculated yield in real time. Farming had changed, become more technical, more computerized. But some things stayed the same. Saturday afternoon in May, Cole walked to the shed. The 560 sat where it always had, red paint he'd touched up over the years, tires replaced twice, engine, still the one he'd rebuilt in '87. 37 years of occasional use, thousands of hours still running. He started it, let it idle. That straight 6 rumble, unchanged, same sound his grandfather had heard his father, now him. Sound of persistence, rewarded of refusal, rewarded of stubbornness, turned to legacy. Wyatt appeared in the doorway, 45, now capable hands, and his father's steady temperament. Behind him came Hazel, 15, learning the same lessons Wyatt had learned at her age. "Mind if we join you?" Cole gestured them in. 3 generations standing in the shed listening to an engine that had been declared dead and refused to stay that way. Hazel walked around the tractor studying it. "Grandpa, why do you keep it?" "You've got 3 newer tractors that work better." Cole considered how to answer, chose honesty over sentiment. "Because there are lessons you can't teach with words. You can tell someone that you can fix what's broken, that you can survive what seems impossible, that patience beats speed every time. Or you can show them a tractor that shouldn't run, but does. One sticks, the other doesn't." The girl absorbed this same way her father had, same way Cole had. Understanding would come later when she faced her own impossible situations, remembered this moment. Wyatt's hand rested on the fender, same fender his own small hand had touched when he was 8. "I want Hazel to learn on this. Not the new equipment. This. So she understands what farming really is." Cole nodded. "That's what it's for. Not show, not nostalgia. Teaching." They stood there until the engine cooled, until the evening light slanted through the shed door at the angle that meant dinner soon. 3 generations connected by land and work and the knowledge that some things matter more than efficiency. The farm crisis of the 1980s destroyed thousands of operations. Banks foreclosed auctions, scattered equipment families left land they'd worked for generations. All documented, all real, all part of the historical record. But not all. Some found ways through. Some refused what seemed inevitable, rebuilt what appeared beyond repair, held on when holding on defied logic. Sometimes with a $500 Farmall salvaged from a junkyard. Sometimes with a wife who worked double shifts and sold her wedding ring. Sometimes with a mother who sold rifles that should have stayed in the family. Sometimes with a machinist who charged $75 and did the work right. Sometimes with a neighbor who admitted he was wrong. The tractor still runs. The farm still operates. The land still produces. Not because of luck or timing or favorable markets. Because when the system said no, when the numbers said impossible, when every reasonable voice said walk away, someone chose different. Someone chose to gap piston rings in a cold shed at 2 in the morning. Chose to learn what a crankshaft journal should measure. Chose to trust that JB Weld might hold against pressure. Chose to plant 480 acres with equipment everyone else had dismissed. That choice echoes. In the way Wyatt maintains equipment, in the way Hazel asks questions, in the way Iris keeps her wedding ring on even when it would be easier to leave it in a drawer. Small acts of defiance against systems designed to eliminate the small and independent. The land doesn't care who owns it. Doesn't care about debt ratios or bank approvals or whether equipment is new or salvaged. The land cares about stewardship, about work, done right, about people who understand that some things are worth fighting for even when fighting makes no sense. 3 generations learned that in the same shed, on the same tractor, with the same tools. The lesson continues because someone keeps teaching it, because every few months Cole starts that engine, lets it run, listens to a sound that says, broken things can be fixed and lost, causes can be won, and the small farmer can still survive if they're willing to work for it. I was 5 years old the spring my father bought a broken tractor, and my mother cried in the bathroom when she thought no one could hear. I didn't understand what was happening. Not really. Wyatt was 8, and he seemed to know, seemed to carry weight in his shoulders that I didn't feel yet. But I knew something was wrong, the way children know things through silence at the dinner table, through the way Mama's smile didn't reach her eyes anymore, through the fact that Daddy stopped singing when he worked. It was March. I remember because my birthday was coming in April, and I'd asked Mama if we could have a party at McDonald's like Sarah Jensen did. Mama said maybe, which I'd learned meant no, but she didn't want to say it out loud. The day Daddy went to the bank, I stayed with Grandma Vera. She lived in the house down the road, the one that smelled like lavender and old books. She let me help her make cookies even though I got flour everywhere and ate too much dough. When Mama and Daddy came to pick me up, they looked different, smaller somehow. Daddy's face was gray like the sky before snow, and Mama held his hand so tight her knuckles went white. "Everything okay?" Grandma Vera asked. Daddy just nodded. Didn't say anything. We drove home and nobody talked. That night I heard them fighting. Not yelling, my parents didn't yell, but the kind of fighting that's worse, where voices get quiet and sharp. I sat at the top of the stairs in my nightgown, Wyatt beside me. "We can't afford it," Mama was saying. "Cole, we have $800. That's all. The mortgage is $600. I know the numbers, Iris. Then you know this is crazy. $500 for a tractor that doesn't even run. What else am I supposed to do?" Silence. Then Mama's voice so soft I almost couldn't hear. "I don't know, but I'm scared." Wyatt put his arm around me. "It's gonna be okay, Faye." I wanted to believe him. But 8 years old isn't that much older than 5, and I could tell he was scared too. The tractor appeared in our shed on a Monday. Daddy and Mr. Patterson brought it on a big trailer, and it looked like something from the junkyard behind the Dairy Queen. Paint that used to be red was pink and brown, tires flat as pancakes, parts hanging off at wrong angles. I stood in the doorway watching them lower it down. Even to my 5-year-old eyes it looked dead. "What do you think, Faye?" Daddy asked, noticing me there. "It's ugly." Mr. Patterson laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Kids got eyes, Cole." After Mr. Patterson left, I stayed in the shed with Daddy. He didn't tell me to go inside like he usually did when he was working. Just let me sit on the floor with my crayons while he stared at the tractor. "Can you fix it? I'm going to try." "What if you can't?" He looked at me, then really looked, and I saw something in his face that scared me more than the fighting, more than Mama crying. He looked lost. "Then we'll figure out something else." But I could tell he didn't believe it. The next few weeks Daddy lived in that shed. He'd leave before I woke up, come home after I went to bed. Sometimes I'd see him at dinner, but mostly it was just me and Wyatt and Mama. Mama started working more. She'd leave early for the hospital, come home late, smelling like hand sanitizer and tiredness. Grandma Vera watched us after school. She taught me to make biscuits and told me stories about Daddy when he was little, about how he never gave up on anything, even when he should have. At school, Mrs. Morrison asked us to draw our families. I drew Mama and Daddy and Wyatt and me, and I drew the red tractor in the middle. Made it bright red, not the faded pink it really was. Made it shiny and new. "That's a beautiful tractor, Faye. Is it your daddy's?" "He's fixing it." Mrs. Morrison smiled, but it was the same smile Mama gave when she said maybe about McDonald's. The smile that meant she didn't think it would happen. I took the drawing home, showed it to Mama. She looked at it for a long time, longer than it takes to look at a drawing. "This is lovely, baby. Can I show Daddy? He's working in the shed. Maybe tomorrow." But I wanted to show him now. Wanted him to see that I'd made the tractor beautiful, made it work on paper, even if it didn't work in real life. I put on my coat and boots and walked out to the shed. The door was open, a crack light spilling out into the dark. I could hear metal sounds clinking and clanking, and I could hear Daddy talking to himself the way he did when he was frustrated. I pushed the door open wider. Daddy was sitting on the floor with his back against the tractor wheel, and his hands were covering his face. He was crying. I'd never seen my father cry. Not when Grandpa William died, not when the old tractor broke, not ever. It made my stomach feel weird, like when you're on a swing and go too high. I almost ran back to the house, but then Daddy looked up and saw me. "Hey, Faye Bug, what are you doing out here? I made you a picture." He wiped his face with his sleeve, trying to hide what I'd already seen. "Let me see it." I handed him the drawing. He held it up to the light, studying my crayon version of our family standing around a bright red tractor. "This is the tractor, uh-huh. I made it pretty." His voice got thick. "It is pretty. Are you sad?" "Yeah, honey, I'm a little sad. Because the tractor won't work. Because I don't know if I can fix it. And if I can't, we might have to leave the farm." I didn't understand what that meant exactly, but I understood enough. Leave meant no more shed, no more fields, no more house. Leave meant everything changing. Where would we go? I don't know. I sat down on the floor next to him, my small body against his big one. "Can I help?" "I don't think so, baby. This is grown-up work. I can hand you tools." "Wyatt does it." He looked down at me and something in his face changed. Not happy exactly, but less lost. "Okay. Yeah. You can help." So I did. Every day after school I'd go to the shed. Daddy would tell me the name of a tool, and I'd find it on the wall, bring it to him. Wrench, screwdriver, hammer, socket. I learned the names, learned what they looked like, felt important. Sometimes I just sat and drew while he worked. I made pictures of tractors of our family of the farm, taped them to the walls until the shed looked like a gallery. One Saturday, a man came and took away a big metal part from the tractor. Daddy said it was the crankshaft, said it needed to be fixed by someone who had special machines. He looked worried when the man drove away with it. "What if he can't fix it?" I asked. "Then we're stuck." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just drew another picture. This time I drew Daddy holding the crankshaft, and I drew it shiny and perfect. 3 days later the man came back. Daddy unwrapped the part like it was a present on Christmas morning. He ran his fingers over the metal and his whole body relaxed. He fixed it, Faye. Look how smooth. I touched it too. It was cold and slippery feeling. Can the tractor work now? Getting closer. But things kept going wrong. I didn't understand all of it. Just heard words like hydraulics and cylinders and things that cost money we didn't have. One night I heard Mama on the phone with Grandma Joyce in Springfield. She was asking to borrow money. Her voice was small and ashamed, and it made my chest hurt. After she hung up, I came downstairs, found her sitting at the kitchen table in the dark. "Mama." She jumped. "Faye, you should be in bed. Are we poor?" She pulled me onto her lap, held me tight. "No, baby. We're just going through a hard time. Is Daddy going to fix the tractor?" "I hope so. Me too." I drew him a picture to help. She kissed the top of my head. "I bet that helps more than you know." Grandma Vera came over one morning with a big box. I was eating cereal and Daddy was already in the shed. She showed Mama what was in the box guns that used to be Grandpa William's. "I'm selling these," Grandma said. "For Coleman." Mama's hand went to her mouth. "Vera, those were Will's. He left them to Cole. And Cole needs the money more than he needs guns in a cabinet. Don't argue with me, Iris. Just take them." After Grandma left, Mama cried again. But this time I understood it was a different kind of crying, the kind that means people love you. The days got longer. Spring was coming. Wyatt said Daddy had to get the tractor running soon or we couldn't plant crops, and if we couldn't plant crops, we'd lose the farm for sure. I didn't really understand crops or planting or mortgages, but I understood losing. Losing meant giving up your toys, your room, your home. Losing meant Sarah Jensen's house after her daddy died, and they had to move to an apartment in town. One Wednesday afternoon I went to the shed and found Daddy just standing there staring at the tractor. He looked tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. "What's wrong?" "There's a crack in the engine. I don't know if I can fix it." I walked over to the tractor, put my hand on it. The metal was cold. It didn't feel like something that could come alive, could save our farm. "Maybe it just needs love," I said. "That's what Mama says when I'm sad, that I need love to feel better." Daddy smiled, but it was sad. "I don't think love fixes cracked engines, Faybug, but I believed it could." So that night I made another drawing. This time I drew the tractor with a heart on it, and I drew our whole family holding hands around it. I drew Grandma Vera and Grandma Joyce, too. I drew Mr. Patterson even though he said the tractor was a boat anchor. I drew everyone I could think of. Taped it right on the engine the next day. Right over where Daddy said the crack was. "What's this?" he asked. "It's love, to help it get better." He looked at that drawing for a long time. Then he picked me up, hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "Thank you, baby girl." 2 days later, Mama came home early from work. Found me and Wyatt doing homework at the kitchen table. "Daddy needs us in the shed," she said. "Right now." We all walked out together. Grandma Vera was already there standing by the door. Inside, Daddy was sitting on the tractor that had been dead since before I was born. "Watch this," he said. He pushed a button. The engine made a noise like coughing. Then it died. My heart sank. "It's okay, Daddy. Try again." I didn't know why I said that. Just felt like the thing to say. Second try, same thing. Cough and die. Third try, the engine caught. And suddenly the shed was full of noise and smoke and rumbling, and the tractor that had been dead was alive. Wyatt started yelling. Mama started crying happy tears. Grandma Vera stood there with her hand over her heart. I just clapped and clapped until my hands hurt. Daddy let it run for a long time. We all just stood there listening to it like it was music. When he finally turned it off, the quiet felt different. Not empty anymore. Full of possibility. "You did it," I said. "We did it," he said. All of us. That night at dinner, everyone was smiling again. Real smiles, not the maybe kind. Daddy even sang while he did dishes this old song about tractors that made Wyatt roll his eyes but made me giggle. Before bed, I went back to the shed one more time. Looked at all my drawings on the walls, the bright red tractor, the family holding hands, the heart over the engine. I was 5 years old and I didn't understand hydraulics or crankshafts or debt-to-asset ratios. But I understood that sometimes broken things could be fixed. Sometimes families could survive impossible things. Sometimes love mattered more than logic. My drawing was still there, taped over the crack. The crack Daddy had fixed with something called JB Weld, though I thought maybe my heart helped, too. I touched the tractor one more time. Whispered, "Thank you for not giving up." 29 years later, I'm 34 with kids of my own. I teach second grade in Springfield, drive past the farm every Sunday on my way to visit. The 560 still sits in that shed, still runs, still has my faded crayon drawings taped inside it. My daughter asked me last week why Grandpa keeps such an old tractor. I told her the same thing Daddy told Hazel, because some lessons can't be taught with words. But really, I keep thinking about that spring when I was 5. About how I didn't understand what was happening, but I understood what mattered. Family. Persistence. Love. The tractor saved our farm, but maybe in some small way our love saved the tractor too. At least that's what 5-year-old me believed, and 34-year-old me still wants to.